Look, I'm really happy that you've agreed to speak to me because I've been pursuing Michel Ballot in a roundabout, hey, Michel, let's have a chat sometime way. And until I got your response back recently, I didn't realize that in this typical, first language English speaker way, I didn't realize that he didn't speak English. And so it all made sense. And when I saw your documentary, The Explorer, pop up suddenly on my feed at Facebook, I thought, wow, here's a chance to find out what he's been up to.
So I can speak on his behalf. I was on the phone with him yesterday. He's just back from another expedition in Cameroon.
Wow.
And yeah, he splits his life between his home in the south of France and Cameroon, where he looks for Mokele-Mbembe. So
wow, it seems like the dream. I understand he's part of the local community. He's married to a local lady. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I think he met his wife. I don't think he met his wife in Cameroon. I think they met in France, but his wife is Cameroonian.
Okay, that's great. Now, I have really fond memories of Cameroonian people in the area in which I grew up, in Wales, in South Wales. There were a bunch of Cameroonian medical students living next door to us. There was a house there that students often rented, and they were just the best people. We came to their parties. We ate their incredibly spicy food. We just really enjoyed every single aspect of the culture, and it really gave me a love for that part of Africa. And then later, as a late teenager, when I got into cryptozoology, I heard about Mokele-Mbembe, primarily from the Congo side.
Yeah.
But of course, that same rainforest also exists or is also part of it is in Cameroon. So I'd really like to know today is how you came to be involved with Michel, and with this crazy rural, pristine part of the world, and what you discovered while you were there.
Yeah, so I'm very fond of Cameroon and the Cameroonian culture as well. So I lived for about 3.5 years in Cameroon with my wife and my son. I moved to Cameroon for a job with WWF. That was back in 2014, something like that. And I was covering the whole Congo basin. So you're totally right. All the rivers are interconnected, in the same forest that's about half the size of Europe. And I spent lots of time with the pygmy populations in the forest. We've been tracking elephants and gorillas and doing some conservation work over there. And the pygmies and the Bantu people would talk to me sometimes. Imagine a campfire, and they share stories about that incredible animal, Mokele-Mbembe. And then I actually moved to London, where for work. And in the French library in London, I found the book of Michel, which is called Sur la piste du Mokele-Mbembe, so looking for tracking Mokele-Mbembe. And I found that story absolutely incredible. And the fact that a man can dedicate his life to searching an unknown animal like this one. So I was like, well, I need to reach out to that person. I mean, we're talking about the same region. It's a place of the world, part of the world I love. And then I sent him an email. We exchanged a couple of emails, and I told him, well, look, I'd love to join an expedition one day with you. And he told me, well, I'm going in 3 weeks to Cameroon. We're going to try to reach the Yenki waterfalls in the Yenki National Park. Just come along. So, so I went.
Simple as that.
Yes.
Simple as that. Now, I think this is part of the cryptozoologist's mantra. Everything is right now. Everybody's ready to go right away. I'm the same. I'm a cryptozoologist. I'm a researcher. If tomorrow somebody said, "Okay, we're going to look for the Jabufofofi in the Congo. Can you be here by next week?" I'd be like, yeah, I could be there tomorrow. I'm on my way. And that's a great thing about it. The sense of adventure that everybody seems to still have. And there's the first thing that attracted me to it as well. Did you feel that you were taken in by this spirit of exploration when you were out there looking for Mokele-Mbembe?
So actually, on the first expedition, I went there because of a sense of adventure. I was looking for opportunities to go back to Cameroon and discovering that very pristine forest was incredible. But to be really honest, I didn't really believe in Mokele-Mbembe. If you know Cameroonian culture, the border, I mean, the limit between myth and reality is very thin. And for lots of local people, they would talk about geniuses of the forests and spirits, and so for me, Mokele-Mbembe was part of that kind of culture. But on that first expedition, it was incredible because at some point we found footprints, very large footprints of an unknown animal, like 80 centimeters and 50. So very, large footprints on an island and on the Ja River. And well, I started to believe that maybe there is something unknown living out there. When you look at the Congo Basin, we don't know half of what lives and dies every day in that forest. So researchers find some small species, fish or plants or everything. And I tend to believe that something bigger might exist out there. So that was the first expedition. And actually, I shot my movie during the second expedition. So after that first expedition, I just took pictures, and a couple of years later, Michel called me and told me one of my trackers has found a cave, really in a very remote part of the forest, and maybe they say it's the den of the animal.
Wow!
And we need to. So I'm mounting an expedition. It's going to be very ambitious. So we will have about 20 people, trackers, and lots of local people as well. Do you want to join? And I said yes. So I'm a filmmaker. On the side of my job, I shot a couple of feature documentaries, and I said, yes, but I would like to do a movie about your research. And he told me, yes, of course.
Wow. Now that, to me, this is the dream opportunity. The den has been found. But coming back to the footprints, what did these footprints look like? You saw these footprints yourself during the expedition.
Absolutely.
What was the situation surrounding the finding of them? Were you alerted to them, or did you just come across them while trying to track the animal in the jungle?
So we do this kind of expeditions during the dry season, and so we take the goat on the river, the Ja River. So when you look at the setting, you take a boat, you go upstream, and at some point you cross a village which is called Ndongo, and it's the last human settlement.
Wow.
Before the forest, and then it's only forest. And actually, local people tell you that they don't go upstream because they're afraid of Mokele-Mbembe.
Wow.
And in the dry season, you see lots of islands on the river, and then sandy islands, that appear only during the dry season. And at some point, we stopped on one of these islands. We walked around the island to look for something, and maybe some evidence. And at some point, we found that series of footprints that was coming out of the water and then going back in the river.
Wow.
And so they had like 4 fingers. So, lots of people have said that Mokele-Mbembe might be a sauropod dinosaur or a very big animal. Actually, they were not that big, and it's not like a sauropod footprint, but it's definitely a footprint of an animal that's unknown.
Wow.
And our trackers told us, that's a footprint of Mokele-Mbembe. And we're like, really? For them, it's not a myth, it's not a legend, it's something that is totally credible.
And they completely, the way I hear about it from other people I've talked to, visited this area, is that people are very casual about it, the locals. It's just, okay, that's a gorilla, that's an elephant, oh, that's the Mokele-Mbembe, in that type of setting. Now, looking at those footprints, actually, my first question would be, well, are we looking at a more juvenile version of the species, or at least the animal that's been described as very large? Could this be a younger specimen? Did that thought cross your mind, or was there some speculation as to the difference in size of what would be normally expected from such an animal?
Well, that's a possibility. So lots of people have said lots of things about Mokele-Mbembe. When the first testimonies of Mokele-Mbembe go back to the 18th century. And then, the legend built up, and some people said, well, it's a dinosaur, it's a very big animal. Now, Michel thinks that it's an unknown species of animal, but it might be a giant, a monitor lizard, or that kind of animal, but definitely not a dinosaur.
Okay, so he's not in the dinosaur camp himself.
No.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I suppose a giant monitor lizard is more plausible according to the prevailing paradigm of what we think has happened throughout history and what should and shouldn't be here. But what confuses me is these reports with the long, sort of serrated neck and long-tailed animal that the natives seem to draw them. I see from the wonderful bio that you sent me about the documentary, The Explorer, there's a lovely little painting or a sand drawing of one of the natives drawing the creature in the sand. And again, to me, that looks like a sauropod dinosaur. So how do you find, what are the differentiations between the types of representation that locals, eyewitnesses even, would give to you of the creature? Are they very varied, or do they always seem to be the same type of animal?
Yeah, it's what's amazing with that legend is that if you talk to a pygmy in Gabon and to a Bantu in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, so from one side to another of the Congo basin, they will always draw the same animal. So a long neck, a small, relatively small body, and this feet with 4 claws. Now, you look at some species of turtles that you find in Australia, for example, that have a long neck. And if it's a new species of monitor lizard, maybe the neck has become a bit longer. Some local people tell you, well, lots of local people actually, they tell you that it eats some fruits on the banks of the river. So maybe, through evolution and history, the neck became longer so that animal can reach these fruits. But yes, it's always the same representation. And what's really interesting as well is that when Michel conducts his research, he comes with a book with different pictures of animals. So he shows an elephant to the local people and say, well, that's an elephant, and then a gorilla, that's a gorilla. Then he shows a bear. And there are no bears in that part of Africa, of the world. So they say they don't know. And then he shows a dinosaur, what we in our culture would define as a dinosaur, but a bit smaller. And they say, yeah, that's Mokele-Mbembe.
That's really fascinating. Of course, I mean, one could speculate at this late hour, 40, 50 years on from the original expeditions or the famous expeditions in the 70s, people have become familiar with explorers going in and the possibilities of what they're looking for. I always wondered to myself, are local people, it can be a form of tourism sometimes, right? There's business coming through the village. Are people perhaps pre-prepared for what we want to hear and, giving that back to us as a sighting? Oh yeah, these are the guys from the expedition. They're going to come to the village. They'll bring some things. They'll buy some things. They'll hire some guides. They're looking for a sauropod. So that's what you should be telling them. Do you think that exists? I mean, it must exist in some way, but is that a problem in your research, or people genuinely quite straightforward about what it is they think they've seen?
That's an excellent question, and it's always a problem. Well, I would say that the farther you go, the more genuine people are. If you go to Mulundu, that's the port on the river where you start the expedition, people know about this research. They have access to television or to the internet, so they will tell you stories, and most of them are funny. But then when you go to the village of Ndongo, which is about a day's ride on the river, and then you go farther, you meet some fishermen, you need some people who have no access to the internet. There's no phone over there, you have no network and everything. They really don't know what this sauropod dinosaur is. And they tell you stories about Mokele-Mbembe, and then you tend to believe that they have seen something.
Okay, that makes sense to me. What you mentioned here actually brings me to another point. Is the again we said the excitement of the spirit of exploration, but how is the reality of expeditions when you're out there in the river? You've passed the last village. You've got just the supplies that you have with you. There's snakes and insects and crocodiles and hippos and whatever else is out there. What's the reality of that with a crew of 20 people and trying to film something significant? What's the harsh reality of that type of that kind of film set? How does that work?
Well, it's an extremely hostile environment. You have lots of animals indeed. So, well, you're always afraid of snakes because, well, you have green mambas, black mambas, different species of snakes. And there's a snake, they call it the snake 3-2-1 because it's like it bites you and 3-2-1 and
you're dead.
Over. You're dead. So I never identified that species, but so we're afraid of snakes. And there are lots of insects. Obviously, there are mosquitoes, and then the tsetse fly. That.
Okay, so burrowing fly. Okay.
Exactly. So it bites, it itches, and for the 3 first days, I mean, you're really feeling bad. There's the fever and malaria, so you have lots of disease, that we can get. But at some point you're there, and at the beginning it's challenging. It's physically challenging, but then the nature that surrounds you, it's beautiful, and then you dive into that kind of environment, and you stop trying to wash yourself, and the food is terrible. I mean, there's almost nothing to eat, so you bring some dried foods, but after 1 or 2 weeks, it becomes a bit difficult. But then you forget about it because you emerge yourself in nature, and it's totally different. Now for filming, it's a bit challenging. So the Explorer is my second movie. The first one was on the pygmies, and we lived in a pygmy village for about a month. But we had access to a small shop where we could buy groceries and to an electric plug where we could charge the batteries. Yeah, okay. Now, when you're with Michel on an expedition, you can't charge your batteries. So I had basically 8 batteries, and when you shoot a documentary,
so you're choosing your shots. Is this
exactly you have to choose your shots.
Power? Is this the shot? Or
absolutely,
no?
Exactly. Wow. And when you shoot a documentary, it's different because normally when you shoot a documentary, you have to film a lot, to get the right footage. But then you have to choose your shots. So it's more like maybe shooting a fiction, or you have to think twice before pressing on your camera.
So it's scripted, unscripted. It's half and half. I mean, in your mind it's scripted, but you still have to catch those natural shots as they occur, hopefully with the camera on, enough battery power, and the tsetse fly has already burrowed its way out of your skin and everything's back to normal.
That's right.
It sounds exciting and also terrifying, and I always have this admiration because Africa, I don't know what it is for Europeans, but we still have this dreamlike fascination, especially for the interior, like those pristine places like the Congo. Anything could be there. It's the same feeling for the Amazon in a way, though the Amazon is sort of more explored in one sense.
Yes.
But this area, the feeling that there could be something there has taken me since I was a young man, almost taken my objectivity in some cases because it's so exciting. What I'm interested to know is, you were there, you went through the struggle, you're with Michel, who's clearly a believer, a knower in the sense that the animal exists in some way, it's some form of animal. What did you come away with? What was your feeling on the possibility of its existence when you finished the documentary after the second expedition?
Well, and you haven't seen the movie yet because it's about to be released, and I send you the link, obviously. But on the second expedition, well, I'm very proud of that film. And when I started filming, I had so many good scenes and good shots and everything. And we won many prizes in different festivals. So I think that, well, we did some good work. But well, I spent 3 weeks filming Michel in the forest, and after 2.5 weeks, I knew I had a good movie, but there was something missing. Was like evidence or something about Mokele-Mbembe. We had testimonies, we had people talking to us, but it's just like secondhand witnesses. And actually, so we went up to the Yankee waterfalls and we started walking in the forest for about 10 days. It was absolutely exhausting, physically speaking. And we got lost in the forest. You see that in the movie. And at some point, we found our way back to the river. So we were able to go back to the boat that would take us back home. And on our way back, well, I won't spoil you the movie, but I'm just telling you that we found something.
Okay.
And well, after that expedition, I'm convinced that something lives out there.
Wow.
And actually, I would like to go back there if I have the opportunity to do so at some point, to really figure out what this thing is. But yes, you're right. The Congo basin, as compared to the Amazon, is unknown. You have nobody. You have some poachers sometimes that it's better not to come across them. But it's completely wild and uncharted, and there's a real possibility that something large roams this area. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing to me, Alex, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the movie. And I'm definitely gonna get it, and I suggest everybody else who's listening or who's watching gets the movie. And the link will be in the description as well. One of the things that's very interesting to me about this area, the Congo, Cameroon now as well, is the strifes and the troubles that often engulf these countries. There must be, you mentioned the poachers, there must be dangers to go into the forest. What kind of guarantees? I see in the biography here that you have guides, and somebody that looks like a soldier or at least a local security. What kind of precautions do you have to take, or what local guarantors do you have to have on your side to embark upon an expedition like this?
So there are two kinds of dangers: the natural dangers, I would say, and the human danger. And the human danger is the poachers. So there you have forest elephants, and forest elephants, they have their tusks are made of a very specific kind of ivory. It's called pink ivory, and it's very sought after by poachers. So they have war weapons, and if you come across poachers, well, they might kill you simply because if you witness their activities and everything, it's like piracy, Fortunately, we didn't come across any poacher physically, but while you see in the film, at the moment we heard gunshots and saw dead elephants, and it was a bit challenging. And then you have the natural dangers, and the most dangerous animal in that forest is the elephant. The forest elephants, so they are a bit smaller than the savanna elephants, but they are much more aggressive. So if an elephant runs after you, there's big chances it's going to kill you. So you have to run faster. And they say, well, if you see a gorilla, because there are lots of gorillas in that forest as well, you have to put your eyes down so that you tell the gorilla that you're on his territory, and he will let you go.
Wow. Okay, but because of course, I mean, the gorillas, as placid and as peaceful as they seem, they could pull you apart. They could pull your arms off without any real difficulty. And I'm sure that people must have been fatally wounded in such attacks in the past in certain areas of Africa, even with an animal like a gorilla. What about crocodiles and hippos and things like that? Does that area have an issue with crocodiles and hippos? I heard from some researchers that the areas in which the Mokele-Mbembe inhabit seem to be free of hippos.
Exactly.
And
there are no hippos. No hippos. There are crocodiles, Nile crocodiles, which are quite large, but no hippos. And well, when we show the footprints that we found during the first expedition to some researchers. So Michel works with the French National History Museum, Natural History Museum, sorry. They look and they say, well, it could be hippos, maybe, with water on it and everything, but there are absolutely no hippos in the area. So, so yes, you just have crocodiles. And coming back to your question, so there's an armed guard with you. So
yes.
Before going to the forest, you have to stop to meet the local mayor of the town who's responsible for the area. And yeah, during that expedition, he told one of a gendarme, a kind of cop, with a gun, to come with us for safety. Okay. Both for natural dangers and human dangers. We never know. Hopefully he never used his weapon, which is a good thing.
And clearly that didn't happen to you, which was a good thing while you were there. Guaranteed, Alex, if it was me, yes, the poachers, everything would have happened. That's just the way my life works.
You have to come on the next expedition, but I'll do a film as well.
Now that you know this, do you really want to take me? Sure. I think it's fascinating. I have nothing but admiration and respect for people who go into that environment. Now, I know the concept that we have sometimes of Africa is not exactly correct. Yes, this area is rural, it's pristine, but it's the 21st century at the same time. So of course there's a greater world understanding among people, even in a far out village, that there's people, you're never going to meet somebody who's never seen a white person, for example. This is even these areas are aware of the wider world. But I'm just wondering what kind of cultural sensitivities you have to be aware of. You said you met the Bantu and the Pygmies, and are these people very used to European explorers now, or are there still a few cultural faux pas that you have to be aware of before you embark on such an expedition?
Yeah, well, Africa is very big. It's a huge continent. If you go to Abidjan or Nairobi, it's like New York. You have buildings. Now, if you go to some more remote parts, time has stopped. You have no network. You have no rescue services. So if something happens to you in the forest,
okay,
well, you're in trouble. Even if you break your leg, something as simple as that. People have to carry you to the boat, but when you're like 10 days away from the boat, it can be a bit complex. Now, in terms of cultural sensitivities, I think the most important thing is that you have to respect the culture of the people. The Pygmies or the Bantus or the Bakwele people who live in that area as well, they will tell you things that can seem a bit surprising, that might make you laugh, and because it's for Westerners, it's a bit crazy, But and in the movie, you see a couple of situations like that where they're telling us something as if it was the truth. It's not, but it's for them, the truth for them. But you have to respect that because they genuinely believe in that. I remember my first documentary on the Pygmies. They told us that a spirit was living in the forest. It's called Jengi, the spirit of the forest. And they were like, okay, at the end of the shooting, if you're very nice, we can call Jengi. He can come and see you. And we're like, of course, we'd be interested to see Jengi. And so we waited, we're patient. And then at some point, we were adopted by the community. And then one night they told us like, okay, we're ready to call Jengi for you. So please go there at the edge of the forest, sit there, wait, and you'll see Jengi. And basically, we saw like three guys, with a kind of dress made of plants and some kind of roof on their head, dancing and jumping around and everything. But and we're like, but these are people from the village, who are dressed as some
Did you
forest.
say that?
Yeah.
Okay. And they were like, no, that's really offensive.
It's Jengi.
This is Jengi.
This is Jengi.
Okay.
And we're like, sure. It's Jengi. And then you have to forget about your préjugés and the ideas that you have as a Westerner. You're entering a new culture.
Yeah.
You have to adapt and you have to believe in what they say.
Perhaps it was part of this ceremony, a spiritual embodiment of the spirit. So the spirit has taken these dancers in their mind, at least in their perception. The Jengi has appeared through the dancers performing the ritual of Jengi, so to speak. I was reminded recently of some of the fake Yeti scalps in the Nepal
Yes.
monastery, and one of them specifically has a very an admitted fake. They say
Yeah.
it's a fake, that they constructed it, but that it is still a Yeti scalp because it's spiritually the embodiment of the Yeti and representative of it for the monastery. So it is real, even though it is fake. And studying different, perhaps say archaic, for want of a better word, cultures or animistic cultures around the world, there is often this, as you say, this crossover between the real and the spiritual. The gorilla can be a spirit, so can the Yeti, so can the Mokele-Mbembe, but it can also be an animal. In the same way as in certain embodiments, as in ritual dances of a god, can be the god. And is that the truth we're looking at, or do you believe that they were just trying to sort of impress you?
No, at that moment with the pygmies, no, they were not, because they waited for so long to show us Jengi. So for them, it was a god. It was an embodiment of the god, as you said. And it's a good comparison with the Yeti scalps and the other things that we, as Westerners, think don't believe in, or if we think as scientists or as naturalists. We say, well, let's do a DNA test to see if it's a Yeti scalp or everything. But if people believe that it is a Yeti scalp, why not? We have our own beliefs as well in Western cultures. So why not respecting others people's cultures?
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, for me, well, they told me it's Jengi. That's fine. Yeah, I totally respect that.
Same here, really, and I think for me, it's about perception. It's really about perception, and even acknowledging sometimes that some cultures often have a catch-all word for big animals as well. The catch-all word can mean, again, like Yeti, it can mean something like a spiritual animal or creature. It can mean a bear. It can mean this ape-like creature that supposedly inhabits the forest and the snow line, and they're all Yeti. But you have to know the culture to know how to distinguish between which is Yeti and which is Yeti, and so on and so forth. And I would imagine it's the same thing spiritually. That this is how we, in the same way as our priest gives you the sacraments when you go to mass, he gives you the bread and the wine, and that's the blood and the body of Christ. But it's not, is it? If we told him that it's actually wine and a little piece of hard bread.
Yes.
So, but yet we wouldn't. If we're believers, even doubt that for a moment, this becomes the blood and the body and everything else. And that's our Jengi, I suppose, in a way.
Exactly. I think so. And what's interesting is that because, well, these cultural beliefs are a challenge when you look for an animal of flesh and blood like Mokele-Mbembe. Because you don't know if they're going to draw something, it's a god, but they tell you it's real, and it can be a bit challenging. And talking to Michel for a long time, he started to believe that maybe Mokele-Mbembe was just maybe an invention or a religious item. But then they talk about the elephant. For them, the elephant is a god as well. They say that the elephant has a spirit that's in between the man and the animal, and that the spirit of the elephant navigates between the two. It's not really an animal, but it's an elephant. We know elephants exist. So when they talk about the mystical things that surround Mokele-Mbembe, well, it doesn't mean that because they see it as a mystical animal, sometimes it is a mystical animal. It's not a real animal. So
that makes sense. And that's difficult for us. If it sits in between the corporeal and the spiritual equally, and that applies to other animals, then there's your proof that they're treating this animal in the same way. Of course, there's always that kernel of doubt, and that's why we're there looking, I suppose. Talking about the documentary now, people obviously, hopefully, will log on and will have a look at that. And I'm definitely very excited to see it. Is there something in it that, as you said, you had an encounter on the way back that you don't want to reveal, but is there something within this documentary that would take you back to the area to film another one, or to capture, further evidence of the creature, or its possible existence? Is that something we might see in the film?
Yes, of course, because there are two ways of searching for that animal.
Uh-huh.
If you take a scientific approach, you will look for evidence, for strong evidence of finding that animal. And well, you'll see the documentary, but that scientific approach was kind of successful.
Okay.
And that's, I've seen lots of cryptozoology movie before, but they struggle in finding something and try to put something together. Everything you see in the documentary is genuine, so that was kind of successful, and I'd love to go back to the area to really see the animal. And there's the other research, which is a more human research, talking to the elders of the village and talking to people who believe things and trying to see where's the truth, where's the myth. And there's definitely an interesting film to make if you investigate further in that area that we're just talking about, because people have lots of stories to tell.
Absolutely.
And once you're accepted, it was when I shot the documentary, it was my second journey to that area, and then you start to being accepted. They stop seeing you as a French person or say Westerner, and they start sharing things with you. They will never share anything because you're not initiated. So you have to go through a certain number of rituals, and you can, if you're not a local, you can undertake these rituals, but they will share more and more, and it becomes more and more interesting and vast and complex. So probably what I would like to explore more in that area rather than the forest is the human style of the people, because it's fascinating.
It really does sound fascinating, and I think it's really important for everybody in the world to get a view into somebody else's mindset, into the mindset of a different group of people. Not different like aliens. Everybody's a human being, and we all have the same things in common to a certain point. But when people are cut off and they build up a sort of a very distinct culture in one finite area, there's always loads of wonderful, interesting things to learn about that.
Absolutely.
And look at us, even the difference between England and Switzerland, or England and France. So we are neighbors. And yet the difference between those two peoples is vast.
Yes.
So it just really goes to show what can happen in a very small area. Just before we wrap up, I want you to tell people, give them some advice for some of these junior filmmakers, people who want to go on expeditions like this. What do you need to do this? What kind of prep should they do to be in the right place to successfully film a documentary like this?
Well, you need a bit of, I would say, spirit of adventure. You need to be extremely open-minded, and you need to. Well, it's going to be very hard to get money or get a pre-broadcasting deal with any television channel if you're shooting a movie about cryptozoology, because, well, if you want to make really a good movie, not something pre-formatted that is for a TV. If you want to make something a bit different, you will struggle finding money. We had hopefully we found a small production company in France who gave us a bit of starting money to put a bit on my pocket, but then the reward comes after, because if you bring a good movie, and this is what happens with The Explorer, you start being selected for festivals and then winning some awards, and we won many awards, and then the notoriety of the movie starts building up, and you know, you can get a bit of your money back, or but if you want to do a classic movie and to go in these areas, you will never succeed. So you have to have the courage to say, okay, taking my camera, I'm going there with a camera, with an open mind, and then let's see what comes up.
So it's unlikely, essentially, somebody's going to pay you to do it. You've got to make the product first, and then the selling comes afterwards. You know, hopefully, is what I suppose, and to have that spirit of adventure to get in and do that. Now, I think that there's so many places in the world that are just desperately crying out for this type of exploration, for this type of forensic, introspective view on the creatures, of some of the unknown animals that could still exist there. Do you have any bucket list locations in mind for other parts of the world, or even other parts of Africa that you'd like to visit?
Yeah, well, so I'd love to go back to the Congo Basin, and to look for Mokele-Mbembe with Michel. We have some ideas for another expedition, maybe more ambitious, and we would like to kayak down the river. Because the problem is that when we go upstream with our dugout with an engine, you know, in the back, we're making lots of noise, so it's hard to spot something. So we'd like to kayak down the river to see what's on the banks of the river, and then there's a place closer to us, which is the Russian Caucasus, where there are lots of testimonies of a local Yeti called the Almasty, and there's a French explorer who has been searching for that animal for a long time.
Yes. What is his name?
Jean-Louis Moret.
That's right. He has that great cowboy getup.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I'm a fan of his. Yes, I'm a fan of the now deceased Marie-Jeanne Kaufman.
Yes, Marie-Jeanne Kaufman, who searched for the Almasty for all her life, and she died. She was 100 and something years old.
102 years old, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is some hard evidence that something lives out there. So obviously the political situation is not easy, but I would love to go to that region and to search for another mystical being, you know, in a completely different setting.
Yes, take me with you. I'll come.
I will. No problem.
Oh, yes. Thank you. But that's the one. Marie-Jeanne Kaufman, again, she really captured my imagination with this spirit. A woman at that time going there, and also as a Russian speaker, in these really rural, traditional type of cultures, and getting such information. Another person, I think somebody who was killed, I didn't know very well. I think he was murdered under a cloud. Jordi Magrana.
Exactly.
Also did
in Pakistan.
In Pakistan, in the
Kalash
Mountains.
He was looking for the Barmanu with the Kalash people. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it seems to be more or less the same creature. You know, well, at least descriptively, you know, to some degree. And, I don't know what there was some sort of rumors around this man, but whatever happened to him, I'm sorry for that. But the information that he also gathered from those people was invaluable. I think that's, at least for the wild man, that's the best locale. Those are the two best locales that we possibly have. The safer one being the Caucasus, other than the borders of Afghanistan, perhaps. But yes, you know.
Yeah. But
sorry, go ahead.
Just on that, you know, now that, well, my documentary was quite successful. You know, I have some now producers working and asking me, you know, sometimes, so what's the next story, you know? Wow. And really what I would love is to find something, to bring tangible proof of one of these mystical creatures' existence. Because, well, we live in a world where adventure is codified. You know, it's you have to be a sports person and go in the wild, and you know we have lots of these adventurers. You know, but what about the dreamers? What about people who just go out there, you know, with a backpack and start looking for something? So if we find something, it would be the best way to send a message to the world that adventure is not dead and there are still some things to be discovered on our planet.
Perfect. I think that's really wonderful. There's a line in one of my books. The opening line is, "The age of exploration is not dead. We just lost interest."
Yes.
And that's, I think people are getting that interest back again. Especially since all of the lockdowns and things, people are looking out and saying, where could I go? What could I be doing with my life? I'll wrap it up there, Alex. But just let everybody know, there'll be links in the description as well. But let everybody know when the movie is going to be available, where they can get it, and how they can support you.
Yes, so the movie is going to be released on the 31st of March, next week. It's going to be released on Vimeo. And there's going to be a link posted on the movie's Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/The Explorer Film. And the link is going to be posted and shared in many cryptozoology groups, and all the festivals are gonna share it as well. So it's easy, or just look it up on Vimeo. It's called The Explorer. And yeah, it's on the 31st of March, and I really hope that the film finds its audience. We have a very active community of followers on Facebook, and lots of people who are eagerly waiting for the release of the movie. It took us like 3 years because the movie was in that festival run that was stopped at some point because of COVID. So we had to delay the release of the film, but now, yeah, we're about to release it, and it's super exciting.
Well, I can't wait, and I'm going to be first in the queue to press play when that movie starts. Alex, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Andy. It was a real pleasure.
You too. Bye-bye.